Philip. Great to have you join us today, whether you're with us in person or whether you're joining us online. It's fantastic to have you join us today. We're going to look a little bit later at a passage from Luke chapter 12. So if you have a Bible with you today, whether you're at home or you're here or you've got a phone, you might want to look that up in advance. That would be super helpful. Sometimes when you come to a service, I head in different ways, and I was kind of like listening. I've heard the song that Leah introduced earlier on. I've heard that once before, and it kind of resonates with, we're actually going to do a preaching series in term 2 through the first 8 chapters of Romans. It really kind of is like right on the mark of where that's about. So it was really interesting. Thank you, Leah. That's right. She's given me the okay to say that we're in cahoots. Now I've lost my train of thought. Just to know where that heads is great. And I actually really appreciate sometimes when we collectively pray and we have space. I'm not sure who you were thinking about when Phil asked you to pray for people who were hurting and in pain. This last week I've spent time with 2 people, directly and indirectly, who are really hurting. One lady who has just lost a son. And the pain that many experience in our world is very real, isn't it? The struggle and suffering of different parts of life at times must feel overwhelming. And I'm not sure how people do it without hope in their life. It's a reminder for us, isn't it, to kind of have hearts for people who are in that space, who are a long way away from God. Today is actually the kind of like the giving and pledge day of our Above and Beyond campaign. Over this past couple of months, we've shared about the church vision and our values as a community, and it's been fantastic to hear and to listen from a variety of different people as they've shared from their heart and their life and their experience about ways in which God is working within them and the calls on their own life. And during this campaign, we've also we've been regularly asking you to consider how you might participate in it, to prayerfully consider how you might be a part of things. Today I want to explain to you what some of the mechanics is. This sounds really boring, but some of the mechanics, so that if you're wondering how it's going to happen. If you've come today and you bought a giving card or a pledge card or something like this, don't worry when we had the other offering before, because what we're going to do is towards the end of the service, we're going to take up an offering which will be specifically towards the Above and Beyond campaign. If you don't have one of these and you would like to get one, you could sort of stick your hand up now, and we've got some people who will run around. Or else what you can easily do is that you can get one from the foyer later on. That's very simple to do. And in fact, I suspect that for most people, what they will do is, if you want to participate, you're welcome to give online. You can do that like getting the details off the card or going to our website. If you're joining us online today, towards the end of the service when we do the specific giving offering section for the Above and Beyond campaign, there will be a specific online message which will explain with the right sort of details about how you can participate. Today, you might want to choose to give, or you might want to choose that you will pledge what you might give. So if you're not in a position at the moment where you can give what you're committed to do so, you might pledge to do so over these next months. So for example, if I was pledging to give $1,000 today, I might choose to give that at $250 a month over the next 4 months or something like that. Next week, as I mentioned last week, next week is Easter. We won't be talking about the Above and Beyond campaign over our Easter services, okay? And just to let you know, so that you aren't sort of anxious about that or worried that we didn't speak about it during that particular time. But what we will do as a church leadership is we will give updates over each kind of once a month over the next few months as to what's happening and where we're at with regards to our targets. We want to communicate with you and be as transparent as we can about there. And it's kind of a good reminder for each one of us as to how we're participating. We've been asked to prayerfully consider what God might be placing on our hearts. I know as a church leadership team, we've been considering this for about 9 months. And our church leadership team was asked to commit in advance. And our leadership committed over $40,000, over $41,000, because we wanted to be putting a stand as to say, this is where we're heading. Because we want each person to participate, to partner with us. At this stage, we have over $80,000 committed. We're aiming for $268,000 to clear all the debt and to free up the resources to continue to pursue our vision. And to reach this amount, the truth is that we need everyone to participate. You can do the maths. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that too much of rocket science. If we say it's 268,000, if there's 268 people, it's $1,000 a pop. Now, please understand, we do not believe that every single person is in this space. One of the phrases that's been mentioned before is, that's right, oh, I love that. One of the phrases that's been mentioned before is, it's not about equal giving, but about equal sacrifice. But ideally, to be frank, we need everyone to participate. And for some of us, that might mean that this will be the first time that we financially partner with CHBC. Maybe we're new here. Maybe we're taking some first steps of what it means to follow Jesus. Or for whatever reason, we've never become a financial partner. Or can I say, now is the time to begin? And I want to be frank and say something like this to you, right? It may mean that you choose to give $20 or $100. And you might think to yourself, that is not a significant amount of money. That's not going to knock off the debt. What difference will that make? Can I say that to all of us? As much as, yes, there is an amount of money that is our target, the truth is that we need all of us committed not just to partner with our dollars, but with our hearts and with our resources and our hands equally as much. And this might be a first step for you, a significant step to say, yes, actually, I am a part of this community. I want to partner in this way. And so that might be a very significant commitment that you're making. For some of us who have a conviction and a capacity, it may mean a more significant financial gift. It may mean $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000. I don't know what God might place on your heart, and I don't know your capacity. But I do know that as a church community, that we are committed to a future together, committed to a vision of transforming Maroondah for Jesus in positive ways. And so we're urging you to partner with us, to contribute, to be a part of it. That's all for today. So if you've got a Bible with you, if you can open up to Luke chapter 12, that would be fantastic. In Australian society, there are a number of topics that are considered that should never be discussed around the family dinner table or with guests. Traditionally, that's the big three. You know what the big three is? Politics, religion, and sex. Well, I want to suggest that maybe even a higher element to consider and not to discuss around the family table is money. Money is a sensitive subject, and one that I suppose in essence is considered it's far safer to stay away from the topic of money around the table. And there's a reason, I think, for why people don't want to head in that space. For a lot of us, we kind of respond, say, well, that's my personal information. I want to keep that for myself. Or maybe we go a little bit further and we go, you know what? Whenever people talk about money, the odious gift of comparison raises its head. Comparison in many ways is an ugly, ugly world. I earn more than you, or I earn less than you. I mean, what does that say? Does it say that you are worth more than me? Like your life is more valuable? Does it say that your time is more precious than someone else's time? I find it somewhat ironic that people are prepared to weigh in on money matters as long as they don't relate to ourselves. You know, the conversation might end up something like, well, did you hear how much the Johnson family spent on a new house? Or did you see that Michelle's got a new car? It's easy to weigh on those things, but when it comes to our own situation, stay away from that. Why is that the case? Why does it feel so personal? Maybe because it speaks about what we prioritise in life, what we place value on. The contrast, though, is Jesus. Because Jesus, on the other hand, weighs in boots and all. In the world and the teaching and the life of Jesus, there's no separation of money and faith. In fact, faith pervades all areas of life. It's not just limited to one area. It goes into all the sacrosanct areas, all the areas that we stay away from, the things that we shy away from, that we don't want to speak about. Well, Jesus is clear. Faith penetrates all those areas. And so in Luke chapter 12, we read this really engaging story. It starts off that there's a person in the crowd and he yells out to Jesus, "Tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me." Always, whenever there's a will, there's an argument. It's let's get it straight on the situation here, okay? And Jesus replies to this person. He says, "Friend, who made me a judge over you to decide such things as that?" He doesn't want to engage in this guy's personal legal situation, but he says, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed, for life is not measured by how much you own." Tells a story. Rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. Says to himself, "What should I do? Don't have room for all my crops." He said, "I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have enough room to store all my wheat and other goods. I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry." God says to him, you fool, you'll die this night. You'll get everything that you worked for. A person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. And then Jesus, in fact, goes even further. I mean, if that's not kind of potent enough to start, he takes the opportunity to drill deeper into the impact that money has on all of life and faith. He turns to his disciples. So at first there's been the crowd listening. And now it's just got kind of like the smaller group that he draws in around himself. That is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, he says to them. Whether you have enough food to eat or enough clothes to wear. For life is more than food, your body more than clothing. Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them. You're far more valuable to him than any birds. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can't accomplish a little thing like that, what's the use of worrying over bigger things? So he tells them, when it comes to money, first of all, he says that your value is not measured in dollars and cents. God provides all you need. You're more important than that. Keeps going. Look at the lilies and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for flowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? Don't be concerned about what to eat and what to drink. Anxiety. How many people here have felt anxious about money? Don't worry about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world. But your Father already knows your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything you need. Well, first up, you've got to say, ouch, because this is a painful passage. You know sometimes how we can read some of God's word and we can think that applies to someone else? If you can't find something in here that hits you somewhere here, I will be amazed. And this is a passage that strikes right to the core of where we are. It's in my mind, it's up there with the, let him who is without sin cast the first stone, or take the log out of your own eye before the speck out of someone else's eye. It's up with those passages for ouch factor. And the reason I find them ouchy is because they are revealing. They show things about ourselves that we often don't want other people to know. We each have things that we hide, that in a sense we're ashamed that others would see. And here Jesus drills down into what is important in our life, what is truly valuable. I mean, this is core. This is core stuff about who we are as people and our faith and our identity in Jesus. And Jesus is such a skilled teacher that the stories that he tells penetrate to the very heart of who we are. Don't worry about material possessions. They can possess you. Instead, your highest priority should be the things of God. The kingdom of God takes precedence over all else. So don't be afraid, little flock, he goes on. For it gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions, give to those in need. This will store up treasure for you in heaven. The purses of heaven never get old or develop holes. Your treasure will be safe. No thief can steal it. No moth can destroy it. Jesus might as well be saying the treasures of this earth can steal your heart. But the treasures of heaven are eternal. Invest in those things that don't die, that don't depreciate, that don't break down. And here's the punchline, isn't it? Because if you read the next verse, for wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. If you want to know what a person truly values, look at what they treasure. That's what Jesus is saying, isn't it? Our treasure reveals our heart. It exposes it. For wherever your treasure is, that's where your desire is. Jesus links those two things together, treasure and desire. It reveals what's happening within us. If I say that I love my footy club, but never go to a game, I don't know any players or never wear club merch, I'm exposed as a fraud. I'm lying. I lie to myself and I lie to others. My claim of love for my club is false because my treasure should be where my heart is. You see, for what we truly treasure, we will always find time for. What we truly treasure, we will always find money for. Our treasure exposes the truth about our priorities. And to be frank, that's why it's such a difficult topic, isn't it? Because none of us want to be exposed. We don't want lies to be revealed, to be ashamed. It's truly one of the most convicting phrases that Jesus ever utters. If how we spend our money reveals our heart, if it shows what we prioritise, my question, though, is I'm stuck with is what do we do if we don't like what we see? What if when our heart is exposed, it's confronting, or if it's shameful? Am I just stuck with this heart? Am I just stuck with it? If that's my desire? And even more potently, what does it say about my belief, my faith, my life? I mean, does it say that I don't truly treasure God at all? And even if that's the case, if it exposes that, well, how do I recapture that treasure in God? I think that raises that question. Because it's one thing to expose it, but it's not the sort of thing that you just want to leave lying there on the ground and kind of like, well, there you go, and just walk away. What are we going to do with it? In Australia, we usually marry people because we love them. The correlation to that statement is that we divorce someone because we no longer do. The Australian Institute of Family Studies is a government organisation that researches the causes of marital breakdown. And there's a category within their kind of research that is called affective issues. They are kind of their behaviours in a marriage that affect the other person. They include things like how we communicate, how we feel, or how we emotionally relate to another person. And according to the research, this general category of affective issues is the most significant factor in marital breakdown. About 63% of people attribute their relationship breaking down due to this category. The highest is considered communication problems, about 22%. The third highest is a spouse having an affair, just below 20%. Sandwiched in the middle is what is a catchphrase, a terminology called incompatibility or drifted apart. Just above 20% is the number of people who attribute their divorce due to that reason. Is this just the nature of a relationship and love? The infatuation, the passion of early romance cools and eventually becomes icy and indifferent? For where your treasure is, the desires of your heart will be. I want to tinker with that phrase for a second. You place your treasure where your heart is. And what I want to do here is I want to flip the subject and the object. I'm sorry if this is an English lesson. I'm trying to remember how long it might have been. For as much as you place your treasure where your heart is, you also place your heart where your treasure is. As I mentioned before, about 1 in 5 couples identify the cause of their divorce as drifting apart. I've married nearly 100 couples. I don't know of any of them who thought that at the start of their marriage that they wanted to drift apart. None. None of them came to me and said, we're good for 3 years, we're good for 11 years. None of them. But drift is always a problem for many things in life, isn't it? How do you counter that drift? Is it possible not to drift apart, but instead to drift towards each other? There used to be an old saying, and I think it's an old saying for a particular reason because it's not legit. And the old saying was this: absence makes the heart grow fonder. You ever heard that expression? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. I used to have a friend of mine who was my spiritual mentor. He was a senior executive in the business world and he would travel a lot. I mean, he would be travelling overseas every month. And he would say to me, yes, Andrew, absence makes the heart grow fonder of other women. If you do nothing, the drift just happens. How do you invest in a relationship so that it doesn't drift apart but grows together? I mean, think about the ways in which relationships begin. Dates, romancing, spending time together, listening, encouraging. In fact, you could put this under this category of treasuring each other. For where your treasure is, there will be your heart. In marriage renovation circles, in people in this situation, it's said that one of the keys to restoring a healthy marriage in this place is to ask the couple to treat the other person like they once did. I mean, think about maybe the contrast between how a person might treat a romantic partner after 6 weeks versus 16 years. Treasure the other person, and your heart begins to follow. Encourage your spouse like you once did. Take joy in them, who they are. Be generous, affectionate, kind. Treasure them, and your heart will be with them. Instead of drifting apart, hearts move together. It's not just a matter of waiting for love to magically reappear. Treasure and watch the heart follow. If I love something, my treasure will naturally follow. If I treasure something, my love will follow. For you place your treasure where your heart is, and you place your heart where your treasure is. I think this also applies to our faith, doesn't it? When you place your treasure in the things of God, it deepens our faith, strengthens our confidence in Him. If we come each day with gratitude, if we take joy in the things of God, if we celebrate His goodness, if we're generous with our resources, with our time, our talent, our words, our money, you place your heart where your treasure is. For as much as it is true that our treasure follows our heart also follows our treasure. And this is my challenge for each one of us, myself included, that we will place our treasure where we want our heart to be. What do we treasure here at this church? Our mission and our vision are focused on seeing lives transformed to be followers of Jesus. That's the very core of what we're about. And so when Matty gets up here and he talks about a young guy who 2 years ago was angry, disinterested, disengaged, and then his life begins to be transformed, that is what we celebrate. A few weeks ago, Ivana shared about her baptism, about how her life was changed, about how she went from indifference to this sense of love overflowing out of her heart. That is what we are about as a church community. To see hope, meaning, and love where there once was despair and emptiness and no love. To see lives transformed by Jesus. That is the core of what we are about. And I want to tell you today that this church is committed not only for today, but for that future in this world. This is a world in which despair and emptiness, a lack of belonging, also is needed. The solution in Jesus is needed more than ever. This church is about that today and also about that tomorrow. This is the reason, the heart of what we've been talking about through this Above and Beyond campaign. So the campaign, as much as it is about money, is actually just a resource, the money. It's really about us being united for this vision and mission together. That's the core of what it's about, to be frank with you. And this church is interested in that not just for 2024, but for 2044 and 2064. As sometimes that's hard for us to wrap our heads around. I find what we often do is we apply our personal stage of life to the church. It's hard to separate those two things. And so if we're retired, we've moved into a time of our life where the way in which we treat our resources is these have to sustain me for the next 10 or 20 years or whatever it may be. And we move into that stage. And so sometimes we think, well, that's what our church should be doing because that's what's happening in my personal life. That's what we should be doing in our church community. It's hard to kind of separate the two things. I'm in the next stage of life, sometimes what's called the third quarter of life. And in the third quarter of life, it's the stage in which all of a sudden all the TV advertisements are about go to see a financial advisor so you'll be able to survive in your retirement. If you go to a bank, the bank's saying things like this: have you paid off your mortgage? They're not saying to you, take out a new mortgage. That's what they're thinking about. They're planning to take the foot off the accelerator. So should I be thinking about that with regards to church life as well? Or if you flip and you go back an even earlier stage where you're in your 20s or your 30s. In your 20s and 30s, you're not thinking about retiring. You're thinking about building. And the building is about, I'm okay to take out a mortgage because you know what? I've got 40 years of work. Well, by the time there'll be 60 years of work for you. And if you're a teenager, you just go, I don't care about any of this. I'm just going to survive week to week. Can I say to you, the church, the bride of Jesus, does not operate on a human life cycle. It doesn't. The church of the first century is also the church of the 20th century, when this local church began. It's also the church of the 21st century, where we are today. It'll also be the church of tomorrow. It will still be the bride of Christ, the place where hope, meaning, and love is available for the world. That's what we're about. This church is about investing for the future. And so what I'm asking of you is this. Yes, I'm asking you to place your treasure where you want your heart to be. But I'm not, to be frank, asking just about money. I'm asking about all of your life. Money is just too small a thing to ask for. I'm asking about your heart. I'm asking about your resources. I'm asking you to come before the Most High God and commit yourself to place your treasure where you want your heart to be. For where your treasure is, there will be your heart. Don't be afraid, little flock. It gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions, give to those in need. This will store up treasure for you in heaven. The purses of heaven, the things of heaven, they never go old. They don't depreciate. They don't break down, develop holes. That treasure will be safe because no one can steal it. No moth can destroy it. For wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. You know, today, we sit in the sacrifice of those that have gone before us. People who you and I did not know. We sit in their sacrifice. They made some things possible that today we build on. They're part of a generation that paid a price, not for themselves, but for the generations to come. And you and I have those same opportunities today to build. And I'm going to correct you, Phil, my brother, because our young people are not the church of tomorrow, they are also the church of today. But they will very much be a part of the church of tomorrow. And so I'm calling on you to be a part of that mission and vision, to give with all of your resources, your time, your talent, your money, your heart. Let's pray, shall we? For our God, when we are truly honest, we are often exposed. And we know that in a very practical way, money exposes us. It reveals what we truly value and prioritise. Sometimes we're ashamed. God, I pray that you would forgive us for the times that we've been greedy, when we've been selfish. And Father, I pray that you would replace that old heart with a heart of generosity, with a heart that invests in your kingdom, things that will never rot, things that will never break down, but things that have eternal consequences. Father, I pray that we would have the courage to continually place our treasure where we want our heart to be. And so, our God, we ask that through this, that your kingdom, your bride, would shine brightly, and that people's lives would be transformed.